Most families don't think about legal decision until something goes wrong. It usually starts small, a letter in the mail about benefits, a hospital visit that wasn't expected, a conversation where your parent says they're fine, but something feels off. And then suddenly you're being asked questions you weren't prepared for. Who can make decisions? What coverage do they actually have? What happens if something escalates? And that's when families realize they're not just dealing with one issue, they're navigating legal, healthcare, and financial systems all at the same time. And no one really explains how those systems work together. I'm Dale Corpus, a senior transition strategist and senior focused real estate expert based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And through my work, I help families navigate some of the most complex decisions around housing, care, and timing, especially when everything starts overlapping all at once. This podcast is here to help you understand how the system actually works so you can make better decisions before things reach a crisis point. My guest today is Jennifer Pardini, Community Education Manager at Legal Assistance for Seniors. Jennifer and her team help older adults and their families navigate a wide range of legal and benefits related challenges, from elder abuse and conservatorships to public benefits, housing issues, and Medicare support through programs like HICAP. What's important about their work is that they provide guidance and support at no cost, helping families better understand their options before situations become more complicated. Today, we're going to talk about what families don't realize about these systems and why so many people feel overwhelmed trying to navigate them. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast, where we help families navigate senior living, real estate, and everything in between. Hosted by Senior Transition Specialist Dale Corpus, this show brings you expert insights, real solutions, and stress-free strategies to make senior transitions simple. Ready to dive in? Let's go.
And we're back, everybody. Jennifer, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Pleasure to have you on. And for our listeners and viewers who may not be familiar with Legal Assistance for Seniors, can you share what your organization does and the types of people you help and where you help them geographically?
Yes. So we are a nonprofit that serves older adults in Alameda County. We are Legal Assistance for Seniors, so we provide free legal assistance in specific areas of law to residents of Alameda County. And we run the county's Medicare counseling program called HICAP. And so for that, we do serve Alameda County, but there is a HICAP that serves every county. So anyone listening can get help where they are.
Perfect. I'm glad you explained all that, because I know most families don't even know resources like this exist until they're already in a tough spot. And let alone, I didn't even know you guys existed and what you guys fully did, and just so recently myself. So my next question is this: from your perspective, what are the most common situations families come to you for help with?
It's interesting because we're really two different programs in one house. So there's all
Okay.
the legal stuff that people will come to, but I would say a lot of clients are also coming to us because of a Medicare question or sometimes a problem, and they're coming in through the HICAP program. And that is a variety of different situations that we see. Whereas the legal services, because it's specific areas of law, we've got people coming to us when they need help in that area, but it's always going to be the older adult that has to be the client coming to us, versus with HICAP, we can kind of help friends or family who are helping the older adult navigate as well.
Okay. Now, what's typically happening in a family's life when they finally decide to reach out to you?
Well, like you mentioned in the intro, often somebody got a letter and now it's
Yeah.
like, what's going on? And other questions are coming up. And it might be the first time that they're having a conversation about not just that topic of the letter, but then leading down this rabbit hole of other things that they're finding out. And so we get all kinds of calls. And if it's not something we help with, we always do try to make referrals because we want to make sure that people are getting help. On the legal side of things, a letter someone has gotten may have to do with a public benefit, like receiving their Social Security or supplemental security income, and that they may owe money back, or there's a problem, or they're going to be cut off, right? That's a crisis moment. That person's definitely coming to us. For elder abuse, it's going to be a little bit different, right? That's not a letter someone received, but it's something that a situation has escalated to a point that is no longer tolerable, or
Right.
functional. So they're going to reach out to us for help. We do, some housing work, we do some consumer fraud work, and it just sort of has to fit into the puzzle for us to be able to help. But again, this is why I'm saying anyone can call, because if we're not the right part of the puzzle, somewhere else there is help.
Yeah. And then also from your perspective, what are the most common situations? And you probably touched on some of them already. What are the most common situations families come to you for help with?
If we're talking on the family side of things, a lot more of that is going to be in high cap in Medicare. So sometimes it's just the older adult themselves aging into Medicare or retiring and they have questions. We love those. Those are what we call
Yeah.
easy problems, right? Because we can just sit with someone and explain it and then help them understand what kind of things to think about, what questions to ask, and make an informed decision. Easy peasy. What families often come to us for is more of there's a crisis, someone is in the hospital, someone is, needing either nursing facility care, long-term care. The family doesn't know really with the insurance what it covers or like what they're entitled to. And so we can still talk to them. We can still help them understand those things. In those cases, we're part of a team because we're not the social worker. We're not going to solve all the things, but we are here to support and inform.
Now, I want to pivot a little bit. Let's pivot to what are some of the biggest legal or decision making issues families don't see coming?
I think so much of it really comes back to discomfort around having conversations. And so if a family doesn't want to talk about a time when someone might need care or when there could be an emergency and then create a plan, that's when they're going to end up coming to us with questions. Because if people are willing to sit down and have a conversation about the kind of medical care they would want and then put it down in an advanced healthcare directive, or
Yeah.
if something were to happen to them, who is going to help them take care of the financial, you know, all the pieces of what that could look like? Because if you can fill out power of attorney and have that person named, it's going to be a clear path to exactly what the older adult wanted. And if those things are not in place, it is a free for all. Who can step in, right? Who has the time, who has the capability? It may not be the one that has the most expertise. It may not be the one that the person would have wanted. And
Yeah.
so a lot can surface at that time. Not all of it will be a
Yeah.
problem, but it's also not a great situation if it could be avoided through planning.
Yeah. The follow-up question I have to this is, are there patterns where you find yourself thinking, I wish they came to us earlier?
For some things, maybe. Our favorite answer here is yes, no, maybe. And so for a lot of Medicare related things, certainly, someone may have ended up in a situation where we're like, oh, we could have helped them if they had just come to us earlier
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
let us explain how things work. But that's not to anyone's fault, right? Like if they didn't know we existed, if they didn't even know it was something they could get help with, it's not like they've created the situation for themselves. It's just where they're finding themselves when they get to us. And so of course, we would like love to help every person who's suddenly qualifying for Medicare make sure that they're getting questions answered before they're making decisions. And like a lot of times someone might pick something that they think is right at the time. And then when a circumstance changes, like a health condition, maybe that thing is not the best anymore. And so figuring out what that looks like now. And then on the legal side of things, it's just very hard to say like, oh, you should have come to us earlier because with most legal things, you're helping because the problem has come up and there's not necessarily something they could have come to us for on the legal side of
Yeah.
things. But that's why I'm so focused on planning and conversations because if the more a person plans and has those conversations in the family, the less likely they are to end up calling us for services.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. What situations tend to escalate quickly if they're not addressed early?
Um, oh, just so many different things can happen. Oh, there's so many answers to it. So it's interesting because on the medical side of things, speaking into like Medicare and health insurance, I mean, things can escalate very quickly if someone has a fall, if there's some sort of accident and they're ending up in the hospital and now someone is having to make decisions for them or trying to even figure out like what is their coverage and what are their options and where can they go and get help. And that's not necessarily something that everyone's going to think about preparing for again because a lot of people don't necessarily want to think about those times or have a conversation about it, but it definitely happens and we definitely get calls. And And on the
Uh-huh.
legal side of things, we do get a lot of housing questions. We don't help with everything tied to housing, but if someone's getting an eviction notice, that's like a pretty quick, you have to decide what your actions are going to be and what your options are. And so it might be something that we're helping with, but it also might be something we refer out. For our other areas of law, we help with guardianship of minors. So, and that's our lowest age threshold for any of our programs. And that's anyone over 50. If they're taking
Okay.
care of someone under the age of 18 and they want to be their legal guardian, they can come to us for help. That's not necessarily something that's moving quickly, I would say, but it's like all of a sudden, let's say a grandparent finds the grandkids are staying with them. Something is, putting off all the flags of like, we have to deal with this more than just they're here for a few days. And so that's going to feel like a crisis. And they can come at no cost to get help. We help them with documentation. We help them with the court process to get guardianship. And that's going to give that older adult all the same legal rights as a parent for decision making. But it is a process. It's not a thing that happens really quickly, but the decision to do it might be made very quickly. And they're not going to even know where to turn most of the time when they're trying to figure out what their options are. So that's something we assist with. For elder abuse cases, it's not necessarily that the elder abuse escalated quickly. In a lot of situations, it's something that builds, but it hits a breaking point, and that might feel like it happened very quickly. And so
Yeah.
then someone's going to call us, but it does have to be the older adult. I always tell people, I can't say like,
Yeah.
my brother's living in mom's basement. He's like spending all her money on drinking beer and like not doing anything all day. And I think that's financial elder abuse. And I think, he's taking advantage of her. I can think all those things. I don't. My brother's lovely. I can think all those things. But if my mom doesn't think it's a problem, right, she has to be the one calling us. So if she doesn't think it's a problem, we can't do anything about it. But if there's a time when that person then goes, you know what, actually, I don't think this situation is working. I've asked for these things, nothing has changed. And now I feel like I'm at a point where I don't know what else to do. Then they may be coming to us feeling like it's gotten very urgent. And so, yeah, it depends.
You guys help so many different situations. And one of the things that just, surprises me is that you're able to do this all for free. How are you guys even funded?
Of course, anyone can donate to us, right? We take private donation. And we do a lot of work with grants and different contracts with like the county, the city, with the state bar. And then, of course, we fundraise. We throw this amazing conference on elder abuse every spring for senior service professionals to come and learn about, I guess, the hot topics related to elder abuse and ways to remedy them and different tools people are using. And so it's meant to be very interdisciplinary as well. So that's a thing we do to raise money. But we're really always just trying to be out in the community, making people aware of the services that they are supporting when they either donate to us or help us get funding through other means.
Yeah. And one of the things you said earlier on in this conversation is you talked about the topic of typically come in and play.
So glad you asked, because it ties to all the advanced planning that I'm telling everyone to go out and do. So if you've got things in place already, your advanced healthcare directive, power of attorney, right? You've got people to make decisions that you've laid out if a time ever comes when someone has to make decisions for you. That's the ideal. If that's not in, and that's true for a lot of people, then someone may have to go to court to become a conservator of the person who's no longer able to make their decisions. That is a process. It takes time. It can be costly. The person who becomes the conservator does report back to the court. So there's a lot involved. Even if someone is willing to take on that responsibility from someone and they don't last either.
Yeah.
So I've known people who've had to take conservatorship of a partner and done it for like 8 years and they're just exhausted, right? Because they're always having to manage everything for that other person. With conservatorship, I would also just like to mention that's not something to call our office about because some of our attorneys get appointed by the court to
Oh,
represent conservatees. So if anyone has a question about conservatorship, like they're worried about someone who might need it, we do refer them back to the Alameda County Court website. And I would say probably whatever county you're in, if you're listening to this and you're not sure where to start, go to your county's website and look at the court page and see if there's a self-help clinic where you can ask questions. Because as much as I can give general information, as an agency, we wouldn't be able to directly speak to someone. There is a potential conflict for interest if the court did appoint that person to someone in our office. So just covering all of our legal bases. But it is such an important topic because I think if you asked any person on the street, would you rather have someone have to go through that process and become your conservator and you have no say over who it is? It's just someone who's willing to do it. Would you rather have that, or would you rather sit down and have maybe an uncomfortable conversation with family, but get everything in place so that you're involved in your decision making? I think all of us are probably going to choose, no, I want to be involved in my decision making. Like, I will find a way to have this conversation. Many of us, at least.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now, I know public benefits like Social Security or Medi-Cal can be confusing. Where do families struggle the most there?
I think applying for Medi-Cal is probably where I see the most struggle, but I'm going to come back to that and just say with Social Security, it can also feel really confusing to someone
Yeah.
who is getting to an age where they're considering applying for their Social Security, has a lot of questions that they're asking themselves. Like, should I take it early? Do I wait for full retirement age? Do I try and push it to 70 where I'm going to get more because I waited? None of us has a crystal ball, right? We don't
Right.
know how long we're going to live. We don't know what our health is going to be like. And it means there's a lot to have to think about in those things. There's nothing that we do that helps the person make that specific decision, but I would say those are questions I would tell anyone to consider, like what their current situation is, how livable their life is if they are not taking their Social Security yet, or what it would look like if they, waited, or whatever that means for them. And then the application process might feel a little confusing for some people. You can do it online though. You can also make an appointment to go to a Social Security office and have someone assist you there. If you do it online, it's pretty easy to navigate if you're kind of just doing everything all at once. One thing that we see as an agency is if someone is not ready to take their Social Security, but wants to apply for Medicare, you actually apply for Medicare through Social Security. Even though they're completely separate systems once you're in it, right? Your Social Security doesn't do anything about providing you any of your health insurance. The application happens through Social Security. And so if you try to do that online without applying for Social Security to actually receive your monthly payments, it can look a little confusing because up until the end, it looks like you're applying for Social Security. And so people kind of pause sometimes and are worried that they're doing something wrong. So I would say just being aware of that. You can go through the whole process. And if they're really concerned, the best thing they can do is make an appointment to go in. So then back to Medi-Cal. A lot of people don't necessarily have all the information when it comes to a benefit they may qualify for. The income limits do go up every year, effective April 1st. They're tied to federal poverty lines. So trying to navigate like where someone's income falls into even applying for Medi-Cal can feel confusing. Are they testing for assets? Yes, no, maybe. They are again. They weren't for a little while. So talking to someone to just make sure they have accurate information can be very reassuring, because you might talk to a neighbor who's like, well, I applied for Medi-Cal and I didn't qualify, or something else happened, or they might be worried about estate recovery. And so, they may not know that since 2017, there's laws in place that protect someone's estate if they're just using Medi-Cal for regular health care. If they're using it for long-term care, then Medi-Cal will pay for long-term care. And in some instances, will do estate recovery. But, if they don't know what those rules are, they may choose not to apply because they're afraid of when they die having, their house taken away from their heirs or something like that. And so there's different ways people can protect their estate. There's another organization that we here at Legal Assistance for Seniors really love and appreciate called California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. We call them CANNER because it's their acronym and it's much quicker to say. So CANNER is excellent. They're a statewide organization, and they will talk to people about planning for long-term care, about Medi-Cal estate recovery, about options. They can refer people to vetted like elder lawyers who help with things like estate planning and other issues as well. So I like, if someone were asking me what to do about those things, I would say I'll give you some information, but this is who I would call next because they're so good at it. And so when it comes to Medi-Cal, there's confusion over qualifying, there's confusion over, potential recovery later on. And then there's a lot of misconception about like what it means to be on Medi-Cal, but it's actually an excellent supplement to Medicare. If someone qualifies for Medi-Cal, they should apply because their Medicare will be their primary and will pay first. The Medi-Cal will be their secondary and will help get them access to things. We'll fill in cost sharing, will help them cover premiums. So it is a really great benefit for anyone who applies. And they are going to be looking at your income and your assets. If you qualify, you qualify. There shouldn't be any stigma around it. And then when it comes to the actual application, it gets really complicated because people are not necessarily sure what they're supposed to be putting down or how long it's going to take once they apply. So our counselors can help them with some of that process of understanding if they qualify and maybe helping them prepare their application, but it will ultimately get submitted to social services who makes the determination.
Yeah. Where does HiCap fit into the broader work that your organization does?
So the program has been around since about, I think, 1990, and has lived here at Legal Assistance for Seniors for that entire time. So it is a program that the county, so they're federal funds that come to the state, and then through the counties get distributed to wherever the program is going to be run. And we do have to bid for that every 4 years. So we've demonstrated that we do a good job, and that's why it still lives here. And we are mostly run on volunteers. So I just take a second to plug our incredible volunteers. These are people who are willing to learn all about Medicare and then sit down with other people and help them understand it or help them when they have a problem. And a lot of our volunteers come to us and they stay for a long time. We have volunteers who've been here 15 or 20 years as a volunteer, just helping people with their Medicare. And so the program here fits in because we're able to continue to run a very solid program with those volunteers. We had an amazing program manager who was here for 35 years and then retired, which is, unusual for the programs. A lot of times they might move around, they might have different managers. So we were very lucky in our county to have had the stability we've had in our program. So we are a very stable program. I will say any HiCap can help someone wherever they are. So not just to toot our own horn about how great we are, but really the program is great because it is meant to help as an unbiased source of information for anyone with a Medicare question. The nice thing about our agency is that because we are a legal office, health law is one of the areas
Yeah.
where our attorneys practice. So if something needs to happen, like an appeal, if there's a grievance with the provider, if there's something that's being denied, the counselor can refer it internally here to our health law department, and then they can take on the case. And there's no cost for that, again, because all of our services are free. And so anyone anywhere can get help from a HiCap, but not everywhere is tied to a legal agency. And so that's
Makes
one thing
sense.
that's unique about us and our services.
Yeah. How about Medicare? What are some of the most common Medicare related questions or issues people come to you with?
I could talk about Medicare all day long. Oh, I do. But a lot of what we get is people who are either aging into Medicare who are already not working and they're just like, what decisions do I need to make about my Medicare? Again, those are the ones that are easy peasy, happy to help, give them information, tell them like about different options that they have. Ultimately, it is their decision, whatever they're going to do with their Medicare. Also, we get a lot of questions from people who might still be working, who become eligible for Medicare based on their age. And then they panic because they're like, will I have penalties if I don't sign up right now? Like, what am I supposed to do? So we can walk them through that. The answer is as long as you have employer insurance, whether your employment or spouse's employment, you don't have to sign up right away. So just in case I made anyone panic, the penalty would only apply in other circumstances. As long as there's employer insurance, you're fine. So a lot of questions around that kind of stuff. Those are like what we call the kind of welcome to Medicare or new to Medicare appointments. And then we get so many other really interesting things. I would say another big one is someone who doesn't qualify for what we call full scope Medi-Cal, meaning they fully qualify based on their income being low enough.
Yeah.
And then Medi-Cal fills in all those things that I mentioned earlier. So if they don't qualify for full scope Medi-Cal, they might get a letter from Medi-Cal that says you qualify with a share of cost. And then they're like, this is confusing and I don't, what does this mean? The quickest way to say what it means is your income is technically higher than the limit for Medi-Cal, and Medi-Cal has determined that they might help you sometimes if you hit a certain dollar amount in a month that you had to spend on medical expenses. It's not a monthly premium you're paying, it's more like a deductible. And if you were to hit that number, then Medi-Cal would step in and help for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
The state has not changed that, what they think you can live off of in close to 40 years. And the state will still assess that you can live off of $600 a month. I would like to know where in California that's true, where all of your needs will be met for $600 a month. But that might mean that if, even if they're not that far above qualifying for Medi-Cal, because this program thinks they can live off of
Yeah.
$600, that share of cost might actually be quite a high number before they can get any assistance. It's okay in an emergency. It's not a great long-term plan for healthcare. So they're getting this, they're coming in, they're like, well, what does it mean? Right. Or other service providers who are working with clients might get that letter with their client and call us because they don't necessarily understand the program either. So we do help with a lot of things like that. We help families when it, like I was saying, if it's crisis mode, someone's gone into the hospital, maybe long-term care is being looked at, and they have questions about what's covered or what their options are. And we could talk to them about, at least on the insurance side of things, right? We're not there to make care decisions. We're not there to tell them like what kind of care to pursue. That's where I would stick with the social worker at the hospital or other people who would be involved in the care team. But we are a piece of that team on the insurance side of things. And so we can help with questions around what is covered. And maybe if they do need to change their insurance to have something that better fits their needs, we can tell them about other programs or options that exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you're talking to families, what's the most common misunderstanding you have to correct?
I think just that a lot of people think we're going to just tell them what to do.
Mhm.
Like, oh, they need this care, here, do this. But we can't. And so we can provide options. We know a lot about how systems work, but we're not there to be a decision maker on the care someone needs or where they should be or what a family should be doing. And those are hard decisions to make, but they're easier if the family has had some conversations. And so some people never want to discuss it. I can't make them.
Right.
But sometimes there's easier ways to find inroads to having conversations. I think television can actually be a really great one. You know, if you're watching a medical show or you're watching something where someone's putting a decision about the kind of care that's going to have to be made for a family member or a patient, like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, what do you think of this? What would you want in that situation? It sounds a lot more comfortable than like, we're having a family meeting and we're going to discuss everyone's care plans. Like, that sounds a lot heavier and scarier than like maybe an easier way to just kind of start bridging the conversation. And so, or, you know, if it's someone who's not a TV watcher, maybe there's a book that someone can, oh, I'm reading this book. It's very interesting. And start bringing up questions that way. Because for any family, for anyone who's going to be involved in care decisions, like having some information is really important.
100%. And I love the tip you just gave. And I think I'm going to start giving it as advice too, because I thought that was brilliant. The TV ID, just bringing it up in a casual way. And it doesn't seem so formal. So people are less guarded to open up.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, is there a situation that really stuck with you where getting help earlier would have changed the outcome?
There's so many different things that we encounter. So I'm going to stick with one that's kind of more recent.
Yeah.
Uh, I had been talking to someone whose sister had been to the hospital, and you know, she was receiving SSI, which is supplemental security income. Um, a weird flaw in that program is that if a person is hospitalized, they're considered away from home for more than 30 days, which means that SSI can decide that they don't need to pay them, because there's rules about like if you're away from home for more than 30 days, you don't need to be paid. But if you're away in the hospital and you need to maintain a household, like you actually kind of do need to be paid, because that's how you pay your rent and other expenses, right? So the person had been hospitalized. The brother was trying to handle a lot of stuff. It was the brother that I initially started talking to, just trying to give information about how certain things work. And that was more on, it started on the Medicare side of things. When they started asking questions about more of the benefits side, I did have them start talking to people in our legal department, just because I could not give any legal advice. And so, because I'm not an attorney. And so it was interesting to have a lot of back and forth conversations over a couple of weeks, but also to have that person express to me that they were like really feeling like they were actually getting useful information for the first time in a while, and trying to understand and navigate what their options were. And then also having conversations about like, for this particular person, the fact that they had been in and out of the hospital and their out of the hospital situation wasn't very stable and safe for them, and they were going to end up being, you know, probably either readmitted or needing to be in long-term care, and what that's going to look like. So because we work and we know so many other senior service providers and we are in this world, we have a lot of information that isn't necessarily what we do, but I can at least direct people towards where they're going to get the right resources. And so just having someone feel relief, even a little bit around it, is important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And meaningful for the work that we do.
Understood. What do you wish more professionals in the senior care space understood about when to refer someone to your organization?
I like to tell them if the person says the word Medicare. I do training for service providers as well, and I'll talk to anyone about Medicare all day long. But I don't expect them to retain all of that information. It is so nuanced, so many different ways you can do it. There's so many questions that will come up because one person has asked one question and now there's like 10 more questions. They don't have to be an expert in any of that. If the word Medicare comes up, call the local HICAP. The counselors will help. It's unbiased. It's no cost. Like that is what the program is for. I want them to use us. When it comes to our legal services and being out in the world, we do so many really interesting things in the legal work we do, but we don't do everything. So that sometimes someone thinks, oh, like I'll just tell them to call LAS and they're going to solve all the problems for them. But we can't do that either. We are part of a network. We are part of a team. It just makes me think too, I really wish there were more resources for people to do some of the care planning at a lower cost. I know that estate planning is expensive, right? I mean, we always say like if you own a home in California, you should consider an estate plan because you are protecting a very big asset. But we are not estate planning. We don't do that here in this office. So we can tell someone that, but we also know that it's really expensive. That if they're going to go out there and set up a trust and put their house in it, like they're easily looking at between $3,000 and $5,000 to set up a trust in the way that they're going to want to do it. Not everyone has that cash on hand to go do that planning. The great thing about the documents that I was talking about earlier, you don't need an attorney to do an advanced healthcare directive. Anyone can fill it out. They can have it notarized or signed by witnesses, and they have a valid legal document that at least protects their healthcare decisions. For power of attorney, if someone were to ask me, I would still tell them it's a good idea to talk to an attorney about that document. You can go online. There are programs where you can get documents and fill them out. As a person who prefers to, use caution, I'd be worried that if I did it online, I might not fill it out correctly. And I'd rather just make sure that I'm going through someone who's, because that document's needed at some point, like we're in a serious situation. I want to make sure it was done right. But some of the smaller pieces like that are not the same thing as a full scope estate plan. So even the family can look at ways where it might feel like unattainable for older adult themselves to afford the cost of something like that. If the family really wants to protect an asset, have a conversation about how they're going to fund doing that and what that's going to mean for the family.
Yeah. Now, are there certain red flags where someone should reach out immediately?
Oh, I would say when we're talking about a family member
Yeah.
who's observing things, right? If anything that they're observing makes it feel like there's a possibility that that person is not safe. If it's like memory care stuff starting to pop up and you're like, I'm not sure if they should be home alone. I'm not sure if they're remembering to take their prescriptions. I'm not sure if any kind of thing like that is just giving the family member that feeling of, is everything here happening the way that it needs to happen for this person to be safe and okay? That is the time to definitely take some action. If they're not sure what to do and they think it's a safety issue, they can report to Adult Protective Services. It's anonymous. A lot of people are familiar with Child Protective Services. You know that if you think something's happening to a child, you can call and report and it's anonymous and you just give them all the information you can. It's the same thing for Adult Protective Services. You don't have to be a detective. You don't have to have proof. You just have to have a concern. And you can call it often overlooked. Financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. Those are all great reasons to report to Adult Protective Services if you have a concern. An overlooked area of elder abuse is actually neglect. And it can be neglect by a caregiver or neglect by the person themselves to meet their needs. It could be a caregiver who's neglecting to provide appropriate, things like medication or the kind of medical care someone needs. Also be the person who is self-neglecting by not properly making sure that they're eating or taking medications or doing the things they need to do to stay safe and healthy. So if a family member has a concern that that is happening, the best thing they can do is call and make a report to Adult Protective Services. If Adult Protective Services is contacted, they will open up a case and they will make a decision about sending out a social worker to go talk to that person. So it's not like sending the police to the door. Someone's going to go out and try and have a conversation with the older adult and assess the situation. I'll say that one thing is hard. Is an anonymous report. Adult Protective Services is not going to call back the person who made
Yeah.
the report and tell them what any status updates or anything like that. So the person who made a report may not feel like they're seeing action, but if they're still concerned, they can continue to report. Other people can report. Or APS is taking in information about what the situation may be from other people. That's all going to go into a file, support the case that they're trying to make. Sometimes the caller, they may go out and try and talk to that person. And the first, even second or third time, the person's not ready to have that conversation. But if it's a persistent issue and people are continuing to report, it might take a few times before someone's like, okay, fine. Like, I think maybe I should talk to you. So that is one tool that people can use, if they're noticing things that are really concerning about them, the older adult. The legal issue that they're concerned about, that one can be a little harder because, as I've said, it does have to be the older adult who is calling to say, I want help with the problem I'm having. So unfortunately, the person who's noticing those red flags can't call us and say, like, I'm really worried about the situation. So if they did call, of course, we'd try to give them some referral information to other resources that they might want to use. But it's complicated. Is it legal? I think it's complicated is kind of always the answer. It comes to other things people are noticing, like a lot of us are really good at compensating, right? So if we're starting to not do things in the way that we've always been able to do them, but we can find a way to kind of get by doing it differently, we might be very successful at that for a long time before people start to notice that like what we're doing isn't the normal way of doing it or that it's kind of weird. And not to say that there's only one normal way, but if it's not normal for us and someone is noticing like, hey, you've always done this differently, then you're suddenly doing it, that could be a red flag.
As we kind of close on this episode, if there's one thing you want families to understand about navigating legal and healthcare decisions, what would it be?
So I actually would want people to know that there's lots of different ways that they can tap into resources and information. Said we only serve Alameda County, but every county has an area agency on aging that serves it. Those area agency on aging have referral and resource lines that someone can call. If they're not sure what their question really is, they can call that person and say like, I am dealing with these multiple things, and that person can kind of help guide them towards the right resource. Same thing with 211. Anyone can call 211 and start explaining what it is that they feel like they need assistance with. And it's 211's job to navigate them to resources that will support them in those issues. So whether it's healthcare, whether it's legal, or whether it's housing or, any other issue that's coming up, especially if it's a family who's like, we don't even know where to start.
And if somebody wanted to run a scenario, had a question, how can they reach legal assistance for seniors? What's the best way?
The best thing to do is to call us. So to reach our
Okay.
main line, that would be 510-832-3040. If they are concerned or would like an appointment with a high cap counselor, they can call. We have a special line dedicated that just schedules those appointments. So it's the same office, but it's 510-839-0393. And anyone listening to this podcast who wants help with Medicare statewide can call 800-434-0222. It's a statewide line that will route them to their local high cap wherever they are. So I always just really am focused on anyone anywhere can get help. They just have to call.
Perfect. Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and for the work that you and your team are doing. I think this is one of those conversations that can really help families feel less overwhelmed and more informed about what to do next. And for those of you watching or listening, if you're navigating a senior transition, whether it involves selling a home, funding long-term care, or coordinating trusted professionals, structured guidance is available for families. Go to www.simplifyseniortransitions.com/families. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and share this episode with someone who might need it. Thanks for tuning in. Jennifer, one last thank you for being on the episode with me today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And for everyone else, I'll see you on the next episode of the Simplify Senior Transitions podcast.